Stowe 1990. Winter is the time for comfort, for good food and warmth, for the touch of a friendly hand, and for a talk beside the fire. It is the time for home. Edith Sitwell. In the winter of 1990, Stowe, Vermont, transformed into a magical wonderland. Snow gently fell from the sky, blanketing the charming town in a soft white coat, creating a picturesque and idyllic scene. The streets, lined with quaint historic buildings, twinkled with lights and festive decorations, perfect for the holiday season. The surrounding mountains and forests were covered in a thick layer of snow, offering plenty of opportunities for skiing and snowboarding. The ski slopes buzzed with enthusiastic winter sports lovers, their laughter and joy filling the air. The aroma of freshly baked goods and warm beverages wafted from local cafes and bakeries, inviting everyone to escape the cold and enjoy the cozy atmosphere inside. Crackling fireplaces and soft music added to the comforting ambiance. The Brook Inn, a historic landmark in the heart of town, stood proudly amidst the winter landscape. Its charming facade, adorned with festive decorations, welcomed guests who gathered around the fireplace, sipping hot cocoa and sharing stories of their snowy adventures. As the sun set, the town lit up with twinkling lights, creating a magical scene that warmed the hearts of all who strolled the streets. During this time of year, the community of Stowe came together to celebrate the holiday season with festive events, concerts, and gatherings that spread joy throughout the town. Stowe has always offered a timeless and enchanting experience, capturing the true essence of a classic winter wonderland. It was a place where memories were made, and the spirit of the season filled every corner, making it a memorable destination for all its visitors. Alena Smith had just returned to her childhood home in Stowe for her winter break from college to visit her parents. Stowe held countless memories for Alena, but the one that resonated with her most was her childhood friend Bryan. They had always been inseparable, exploring the town's hidden corners, playing in the snow, and dreaming of the adventures that awaited them beyond the boundaries of Stowe. As the years passed, their lives took different paths, and Alena hadn't seen Bryan in quite some time due to her studies. She planned to visit Bryan as soon as she settled in. Oh, how she missed him, especially his laughter and humor. She had decided to take an afternoon stroll through the town, hoping to reconnect with the familiar sights and the warm memories. As she walked, her footsteps muffled by the snow, as she passed her old high school, she couldn't help but think about her time there. Memories of her classes, friends, and teachers flooded her mind, particularly her favorite teacher, who left an indelible mark on her life. Mr. Harris, he was her high school math teacher. Mr. Harris had always made it a point to spend time talking with her. She vividly recalled the day when Stowe was hit by a severe winter storm, blocking off all the streets and preventing her parents from reaching her. Mr. Harris stayed by her side at school, ensuring they stayed warm until the town council could clear the streets. Both Alena and Bryan had shared Mr. Harris's math class, and they both admired him greatly. He possessed a genuine passion for teaching, going beyond formulas and equations to ignite his student curiosity and love for learning. His warm smile and patient demeanor made him a beloved figure among all students. She always felt it was her responsibility to visit him whenever she returned to town during school holidays. As she was about to walk past a narrow path near his house, a memory flashed in her mind. Mr. Harris had called early that morning, letting her know he had seen she was in town and asked if she could stop by as soon as possible. Alena swiftly changed direction and headed down the path leading to Mr. Harris's house. His home was situated at the end of the street, a small bungalow that had been passed down to him from his parents. Painted in a simple white hue, it held memories of his childhood, evident in the old, rusty swing adorning his front yard. Mr. Harris had a younger brother named Eldthron, who had found love in the next town over, gotten married, and moved away. Despite this, Mr. Harris chose to remain in Stowe, surprising many who assumed he would relocate to be near his brother in retirement, given his lack of immediate family in Stowe. Throughout his life, Mr. Harris had remained single, leading to rumors about his past. Some whispered that he had been an awkward teenager, a bit of a nerd, and his colleagues often joked that he was undateable. Alena ascended the 2 steps leading to his doorstep and was just about to raise her hand to knock when she noticed that the door was ajar. Puzzled, she wondered why Mr. Harris would leave the door open. especially during winter when heating bills were high. She smiled, imagining him trying to save a few bucks by throwing caution to the wind. With a gentle push, she opened the door further and called out his name, but there was no response. Trying once more, she called louder. "Mr. Harris, it's me, Alena. I'm coming in, ready or not." As she stepped inside, she was greeted by a scene of chaos. Mr. Harris's home looked as if it had been ransacked, everything in disarray. It resembled the aftermath of a search team looking for evidence. Alena cautiously began to walk through the house, her heart racing as she searched for Mr. Harris. She started in the living room, then moved to the kitchen. Finally, she reached his bedroom and pushed the door open, only to be confronted by a chilling sight. Mr. Harris lay on his bed, lifeless, with a knife plunged into his heart. Alena fought the urge to faint, her mind racing as she knew she needed to call for help. She fumbled for her phone in her pocket, her hands feeling strangely numb, as if her pockets had grown too large and her fingers too short. Finally grasping her phone, she dialed 911, her voice trembling as she struggled to convey the urgency of the situation. The operator seemed puzzled at first, struggling to comprehend her words as Alena managed to blurt out, "I just found my old math teacher stabbed to death." The shock in the operator's voice was palpable, evident in her quickened breaths and stunned silence, as she realized the gravity of the situation. A murder in Stowe, Vermont, a town that hadn't seen such a crime in over 50 years. Alena has stumbled upon a crime that will shatter the tranquility of their beloved town. Questions swirled in her mind. Who would want to harm Mr. Harris, and why? After hanging up with 911, she immediately dialed Bryan's number, needing him desperately. The whole scene had been too much for her to handle alone. As Alena anxiously waited for Bryan to answer her call, her mind raced with thoughts of the gruesome discovery she had just made of Mr. Harris, with a knife wound to his chest. Seconds felt like an eternity until finally, Bryan's voice crackled through the phone. "Hey, Alena, what's going on?" Bryan's voice came through the phone, filled with curiosity. "I heard you're in town. Want to catch up later over dinner?" Alena couldn't hold back her tears as she replied, "Bryan, Mr. Harris is dead." "What do you mean dead?" Bryan's tone shifted to concern. "Did he die from a heart attack?" "No, Bryan, someone murdered him," Alena choked out, her voice trembling. Murder?" Bryan stammered, disbelief evident in his voice. "Alena, this isn't a funny joke. We don't have murders in Stowe." "It's not a joke, Bryan. I just found him at his home." "The police are on their way," Alena explained urgently. Bryan's tone immediately changed as he grasped the seriousness of the situation. "I'm on my way," he assured her before ending the call. Within 20 minutes, Bryan arrived at the scene, his face etched with worry. The flashing lights of police cars illuminated the otherwise serene winter landscape, casting an eerie glow on the snow-covered ground. As they stood side by side, Alena and Bryan watched as police officers cordoned off the area, ensuring the integrity of the crime scene. The gravity of the situation sank in as they realized the peaceful town of Stowe was now dealing with a tragic and unexpected murder. Detective Blake Truman, a recent addition to the Stowe Sheriff's Department, was at the Stowe Diner having a conversation with Janet, one of the waitresses, when the call came in over the phone. Blake had recently transferred from Burlington, seeking a change of pace after his recent divorce from his wife Amy. The move to Stowe came after he spotted a job ad for a police officer in the area, prompting him to take the opportunity. Burlington held too many memories for him, and he felt the need for a fresh start and a change of scenery in a smaller, quieter town like Stowe. For Blake, the call was a shock. Nothing like that had ever happened in Stowe. That was one of the many reasons he liked the town: the low crime rate. One of the biggest problems they usually dealt with was the occasional scuffle between the Hannigan twins, Michael and Peter, usually fueled by too much alcohol. The most significant case from the previous year had been Mr. Moore's missing ski equipment, which turned out to be a simple case of forgetfulness after a night of drinking, the gear hidden under a fresh layer of snow. Now, the news of a murder in Stowe, and Mr. Thomas Harris being the victim, was a stark contrast. Mr. Harris was someone who had only shown kindness and friendliness to everyone. He was loved by all his students and the entire town. The thought of such a heinous act happening in their peaceful community left Blake reeling. "I'm Detective Blake," he introduced himself. I understand you discovered the body? Alena nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, I know who you are. Blake was a little taken aback by her response. It always surprised him how he didn't have any friends outside of his co-workers, yet everyone in Stowe knew him. Gossip in the small town of Stowe always traveled fast. He could see the entire town gathered outside the crime scene. He hoped the residents believed in counseling because they all seemed to be in shock. He turned his attention back to Alena and asked her why she was at Mr. Harris's home. I was just visiting when I found him. Mr. Harris. You see, I'm on my winter break and wanted to see Mr. Harris, Alena explained. Finally, Blake understood why he had never seen her before. He had remained quiet when he heard the residents talking about Alena because while he knew everyone in town, he had never met her before. Blake's gaze softened, acknowledging the gravity of the situation. I'm sorry you had to witness this. We'll do everything we can to find out what happened. Alena and Bryan were questioned extensively by the police, recounting their interactions with Mr. Harris and any possible clues that might shed light on his murder, their memories painting a picture of a dedicated teacher with a passion for his students and loved by everyone. Summer 1991. Months passed since the murder that shook the town of Stowe. As the investigation grew cold, Alena's life took an unexpected turn. She started to receive threats in the mail from the killer, calling himself the Seeker. The letter first arrived at her university dorm, and when she came home for the summer, it had intensified, leaving her and her parents deeply unsettled and afraid for her life. Dorothy and Thomas Smith, Alena's parents, sat together in their living room, their faces filled with sleepless night. The recent letters from the mysterious figure known as the Seeker had instilled in them an overwhelming fear for their daughter's safety. They knew they had to do something to protect her, or she might become the next victim. Dorothy, I can't shake off this feeling of dread. Thomas sighed, his voice heavy with worry. The letters to Alena have become increasingly threatening, and I fear for her safety. We must leave Stowe to protect our daughter. Dorothy's eyes filled with tears as she nodded in agreement. I've been thinking the same thing, Thomas. Alena's life is at stake, and we can't ignore these warning signs. As much as it pains me to leave our home and the memories we've built here, our daughter's well-being must come first. Thomas reached out and took Dorothy's hand, seeking solace in their love for Alena. We've always tried to shield Alena from harm, but this situation has become too dangerous. We are not able to protect her here in Stowe. We can't take any chances. Dorothy's voice filled with sadness. Let's start making the necessary arrangements, Thomas. We need to ensure a smooth transition for Alena. It won't be easy, but we have to prioritize her safety. They spent the next few days discussing logistics and contacting real estate agents, searching for a new place where they could start afresh. Their love for Stowe was undeniable, but the threats from the Seeker had cast a dark shadow over their lives, prompting them to make the difficult decision. As they packed their belongings and prepared to bid farewell to their beloved town and friends, their hearts were heavy with sadness. They prayed that this change would bring the safety and peace of mind they so desperately sought for Alena. Leaving behind cherished memories in the town they once called home was no easy task. However, their strong will to protect Alena from the clutches of the Seeker outweighed any sense of attachment they felt toward their familiar surroundings. 15 years later, as Alena sat in her boss's office, she couldn't help but let her mind wander back to the time she had arrived in California from Stowe. It had been a life-changing moment in her life, leaving behind the small, picturesque town for the bustling and fast-paced city. She remembered the excitement and nervousness she felt as she stepped off the plane, feeling the warm California sun on her face for the first time. The contrast between the sunny, palm-lined streets and the snow-covered landscapes of Stowe couldn't have been more profound. Her new life in California had been a whirlwind of opportunities and challenges. She had pursued her dream of becoming an editor, and with hard work, she had landed a job at the prestigious Harbor Light Publishing Company. The fast-paced lifestyle had been a stark contrast to the slow, peaceful days she had known in Stowe. In the beginning, Alena had missed the familiarity of Stowe, the cozy winters, the friendly faces, and the strong sense of community. She often found herself reminiscing about the moments spent with her family and friends, the winter festivals, and the magical snow-covered forest that felt like a fairy tale. But as the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, Alena had embraced her new life. She had made friends, explored the vibrant city, and discovered new passions. California had offered her a world of opportunities and experiences that she couldn't have imagined back in Stowe. As she sat in her boss's office, waiting for their meeting, she found herself feeling a mix of emotions. While she loved her job and the opportunities it brought, there was a part of her that still longed for the simplicity and charm of Stowe. She wondered if her parents felt like they had made the right choice leaving their hometown behind for her. For a long time, this question has been a source of guilt for Alena. In that moment, she has also realized that the journey from Stowe to California had shaped her into the person she had become. It had taught her resilience, adaptability, and the courage to pursue her dreams. Alena's attention snapped back to reality as her boss, Ava, walked in. Alena could sense that something was off, a heavy atmosphere hanging in the air. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation. Ava was normally a very happy and jovial person, but this morning her face held a stern expression. Alena hadn't seen her like this since last month, when they were informed that one of their biggest clients didn't want to advertise with them anymore. Ava sat down and got straight to the point with Alena. You know what happened at last month's meeting, and due to that situation, budget cuts and restructuring within the company, we have to make some difficult decisions, and unfortunately, we have to let you go. Alena's heart sank as she listened to the words. She had poured her heart and soul into her work, dedicating long hours to perfecting manuscripts and ensuring that each piece she edited was flawless. Losing her job felt like a personal failure, even though she knew it was beyond her control. She mustered the strength to ask, is there any possibility of reassignment or another position within the company? Her boss sighed, her tone sympathetic yet firm. I'm sorry, Alena, but the budget cuts are affecting multiple departments. We simply don't have any available positions at the moment. Alena, you know if I could keep you, I would. You're one of our best workers, and your work is a masterpiece, Ava acknowledged with a hint of regret. Alena mumbled under her breath, yet it feels like I am not. Tears welled up in Alena's eyes as she absorbed the reality of her situation. It was a blow to her confidence and a setback to her career aspirations. She had dreamed of climbing the ladder within the company, making a name for herself as an accomplished editor. Now those dreams felt shattered. She thanked Ava for the opportunity and left the office, trying to hold back the tears that threatened to spill over. As she packed up her belongings from the table, Alena noticed many of her coworkers doing the same. Those who were not fired had sad looks on their faces, a shared sense of disappointment and uncertainty filling the room. On her way home, Alena purchased 2 bottles of wine. While she was an occasional drinker, tonight she planned to get drunk because she really didn't know what her next move would be. Alena popped open her bottle and drank straight from it, not bothering to pour it into a glass. After several drinks, she began to reminisce about Stowe and Bryan. She realized how much she missed him, especially because she had been forced to cut contact with Bryan for the first 2 years. Her parents needed to ensure that the seeker didn't follow them, leading to the separation. By the time she contacted Bryan, their friendship was no longer the same. The distance had taken its toll, and things weren't as they used to be for their friendship. She found herself drawn to the idea of reaching out to Bryan and returning to Stowe for a vacation, the town where they had shared countless memories. With her job no longer tethering her to California, and the seeker had not bothered her in over 15 years, she felt a newfound freedom to return to Stowe. Even after all these years, she hadn't been able to find a friendship in California that compared to what she and Bryan shared. While she had made many friends at her work, none of those relationships matched the deep connection she had with Bryan. She occasionally found herself reminiscing about their shared adventures, the laughter they had once shared, and the strength they had drawn from one another. The passing of time had transformed those memories into bittersweet echoes of the past. She started to sort through a box of old letters and keepsakes. Alena came across a faded photograph of her and Bryan in happier times. She traced her fingers over the image, feeling a pang of nostalgia deep within her soul. She then made the decision to reach out to Bryan, hoping to bridge the gap that had grown between them. Alena awoke at 9 a.m. the next morning with a pounding headache. She hadn't had a hangover in years and had forgotten how awful they felt. She made herself a strong cup of coffee. Today was the day she was going to call Bryan. Her stomach felt sick, and she couldn't discern whether it was from the alcohol or the anticipation of hearing Bryan's voice. She sat down at her coffee table near a large window, with the sunshine streaming through. She loved her apartment a little too much. She remembered the moment she first walked in. She knew it would be her home. After purchasing it, she spent an entire year renovating it to be exactly what she wanted. The kitchen was her favorite room. She had a large farmhouse kitchen, perfect for her love of cooking. Everyone found it odd, even the workers, that she had a farmhouse kitchen in a modern apartment building, but it was exactly what she wanted because it reminded her of Stowe. She looked down at her watch and realized that 15 minutes had already passed. She needed to call Bryan. It was now or never. She knew that before 10 a.m. was the least busy time at his bookstore. Once the store started to fill up, it would be hard to reach him, her heart beating faster than ever. She was sure that if someone sat next to her, they could hear it. Ring, 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 ring. After several attempts and 7 calls in total, still with no response. She was just about to go do the dishes when she heard the phone ringing. It was Bryan. She let it ring 3 times before picking it up. "Hello?" she answered. Alena took a deep breath and said, "Hello, Sally, is that you?" She was surprised to hear Bryan's mom answer. "It's me, Alena." "Hello, Alena," replied Sally. "I've been trying to reach Bryan but got no answer. Is he busy at the moment?" Sally's tone turned serious as she replied, "Alena, my dear, Bryan is missing." Bryan was missing. He had gone up to the family cabin home near Lake Eleanor and had not returned. His family and friends grew worried after he did not return and decided to go looking for him. When they arrived at the cabin, they were surprised to see the cabin had been ransacked and Bryan was nowhere to be found. What drove more fear in them was that they found blood at the back door. The police were immediately called and an investigation was started. Alena's heart raced as she absorbed the news that Bryan had gone missing. Alena was immediately taken back to the past, reminded of the seeker. Had he struck again? She tried to calm her mind down, telling herself these events were unrelated. Perhaps Bryan was injured and no one had found him yet. After Alena hung up the phone with Sally, she started to pace the room, feeling helpless. Bryan was missing, and she was stuck in California. There was only one thing she could do: travel to Stowe. She immediately started packing her bag and booked a ticket to Stowe. She felt an urgent need to be there for Bryan. She had felt like she had let him down for the past 15 years, and now it was time to make up for it and be there for him. The 6-hour plane ride for Alena was pure torment, as all she could think about was Bryan being lost. She attempted to sleep, but every time she closed her eyes, she envisioned Bryan lying injured in the snow, calling for help. Unable to bear those haunting thoughts, she decided to stay awake for the duration of the flight.